He is also the producer of the television program Women of Grace on EWTN. He is the author of Call to Knighthood and the Rosary, Your Weapon for Spiritual Warfare, and the creator of the Warrior's Rosary. And I personally am so grateful for this man. He keeps Women of Grace running. And that is no exaggeration, that is no lie. He literally keeps the place running. He and Johnette together, of course.
Yeah.
But we are very, very grateful for him. So without further ado, Tom Sullivan. Thomas K. Sullivan.
25-foot extra HDMI cord, never leave home without it. One of the things I learned in the military was to always be prepared, because you never know, you know. Anyway, as Isabel was saying in the past when I've talked here at Malvern, first of all, it's like coming home. I really love being here, and I love to speak at this event. And over the last few years, I would speak on spiritual warfare, the big picture, the Old Testament, the New Testament, building of the kingdom, the sacraments as weapons of war, and all this really cool rah-rah stuff, you know. So as I started to tell you earlier, Johnette called me a few months ago, and she said to me, our theme at Malvern is going to be at the foot of the cross, God's infinite mercy. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. And she says, and you want to know what your title is? And I said, yeah. She says, at the foot of the cross with a little boy. And his mother. Well, that's what happened. She says, you want to call me back? I said, yeah. And so about 40 minutes later, when I got my composure, I called her back. And then she said, you know, it was Thea, her daughter, who gave her the title. So this is going to be a very hard talk for me. Like Carrie, it's very emotional, but unlike Carrie, I'm not pregnant. So here we go. So, many of you who know me know I have a big family. I have a large family. I have 6 children. I have 5 boys, 1 girl. And I also have 15 grandchildren. From the first 3. The other 3 are still at home. But there was a time in my life, and this talk is going to kind of zero in and focus in on one of my children. He was my youngest boy, Gabriel. And this is a picture of Thea and her daughter and my son, Gabriel. And Gabriel was always this really cool little kid. He loved to play on the slide, monkey bars. And at the age of 3.5, he was Uncle Gabriel to his nephew Zachary. He loved to wrestle and fool around with his brother Joshua. And we noticed one day that he was sluggish. He'd go out, ride the go-kart with his brother for maybe an hour, and he'd go to sleep. He would sleep from noon till 4 o'clock. I'd get him up for dinner, and he'd eat and go back to sleep. So we took him to the doctor, and different doctors were checking him out. And they they were saying, well, his belly's really big, but that could be like megacolon, Boys, they never want to go to the bathroom. They just stay outside and hold it and they get all backed up, So this went on for about 6 months. They took x-rays and everything, and they said, no, everything's, he's fine. Well, see, I have this little Filipino wife, all 4'8" of her, deeply intuitive, and she says, you know what? I'm going to take him to my Filipino doctor. And I said, okay. Dr. Lem. So she takes him to this doctor, and Gabriel walks in, and he takes one look at him, and he said, kid, you're sick. You either got leukemia or anemia. And with that, he took the blood test, sent them off. And that night, we got a call to take him down to All Children's Hospital. The doctors were racing around, and things were like, kind of crazy. And they took Carol and I, and my wife's name is Carol, into this little room. And they said, he's really sick. We said, yeah, we know that. They said, no, he's really sick. And they said, he's going into liver failure. And so we said, okay, well. They got a team of doctors together. They ran their tests on him. And he discovered that he did, in fact, have leukemia. Now, I have 5 other children that are perfectly healthy. Never had a problem. And we were struggling with this, So they admitted us, and things started spinning. We were trying to get our head around it. I mean, it's just so far off our vocabulary, And Gabriel, at first he was, he just wanted to go home. He just wanted to get out of there. And but that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. So we started to settle in. We got him into a room. We settled in, and we assured him that we weren't going to leave him. And so as the days began, the only thing my wife could do was to comfort him. And Dad, here, being this tough military guy, was trying to hold it together for everybody. My family was large, and is large. To be the strong one, everything's gonna be okay. Trying to make light of things when I could. There was even one time when the family came down and we're all sitting around the table there. And, I do computer work, And one of the things that we do is when we're working on computers, if we need to know the temperature of a CPU, we have a laser gun that reads the temperature for us. But one of the things with leukemia is you have to watch the temperature because you never know, And with Gabriel, he hated them rolling this ball around his forehead and trying to take his temperature and stuff. So Dad, being Dad, I bring the laser gun, And I'm shooting him with the laser in the side of the head, And of course, my wife and sister-in-law, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm taking his temperature. That's not how you take this temperature. I said, yeah, but I got the same reading they did, and I didn't even touch him, So, I was trying to ease some of the tension, but at the same time, I recognized how serious it was, So, as the days continued to go by, my wife would pray. And that was what she did. She prayed to Our Lady. She read prayers out of her Marian prayer book, prayed her Rosary. And me, I had a chair of reflection. There was a recliner in the corner of the room that would be my home. And I would have to research the drugs that I had to give permission to use to administer to him. They would explain the protocol to me, what to expect, what's coming in the coming weeks. And they would give me a notebook so big. And we'll come in tomorrow morning for you to sign the papers for vincristine, for methotrexate, so to mercaptopurine, to dexamethasone. All these things I couldn't even pronounce. Like, what the heck is that? And we'll be in the morning for you to authorize us to begin this treatment. Well, I got very little sleep, and I spent many nights in that chair researching, on the phone with Johnette, trying to find out what this stuff was. Trying to get a handle on what leukemia was. What am I looking at? What are Carol and I looking at going forward? We were truly at the foot of the cross. And I know everybody has their stories at the foot of the cross. We all do. You all do too. It may not be a little kid with new leukemia, something else, but you have them. And God uses that time at the foot of the cross to teach us. A couple of times I would notice that there were other children there that didn't have a mom and a dad. Maybe mom brought the child in and dad wasn't around. And I began to reflect on that, and I'll come back to that. The staff at the hospital, they also were trying to ease the situation, They bring up little toys, motorcycles, little gifts for him, to keep his attention off of all of the excitement going around with the doctors coming in and going out and the nurses coming in and going out. And he's got to have this port put in his chest. I mean, he's only 3.5 years old. And as time went by, during these couple of weeks, these first few weeks, we had to get him out to walk, because being in bed for the amount of time that he was, it was 6 or 7 days before he even got out. And the doctor says, you got to get him walking, you got to get him walking. So we began to coax him, to come, let's go take a walk down the hall. And one of the things that made it easy for us to do that was that down the hall was a fish tank with Nemo swimming around in it, a little clownfish from the movie Nemo. And he didn't want to walk for anything, so I said to him, let's go down and see Nemo. And so I said to him, if you can catch me, he's like, no, Daddy, I want you to pick me up. See, I was his protector. Mommy was his comforter. Daddy, I want you to pick me up, carry me. And I'd say, okay, you catch me and I'll pick you up. And I'm boogieing down the hall, come on. And he's walking, he's getting faster and faster and faster. And finally, thank God, we got to Nemo. At the same time, he caught me, so I didn't have to carry him. But during this time, for me, it was a time of a feeling of desolation. Everything else around me kind of disappearing, except, my little boy and my wife. And I know that all of us have been there. We all have had a time when we feel alone, desolate, hopeless maybe. But those are the times that God uses to really speak to us. These next 3 slides, I made them into a slide because I'm not so sure I can read it all to you. I spent 3.5 years in and out of this hospital, and I would write. I put a website up called GabrielPSullivan.com if you ever want to go read all of the posts. Every day, every couple of days, I would update everybody what was going on with Gabriel. And I also used that opportunity to share my reflections, how God was working in me. I will try to read this to you, but don't wait for me, just read it. When things are quiet, Gabriel just wants Mommy to lay with him and comfort him, and Carol wraps her arms around him and whispers those motherly words of love that only a mother can. But as soon as the doctors and nurses come in, he yells and he cries for Daddy, and he won't stop until I grab and I hold him. This quiets him some, but not completely. He's expecting me to protect him from the fear and the pain he thinks is coming. But I'm helpless. My intellect tells me that stopping the pain is not in his best interest if he is to survive. But the heart of a warrior I have is his father. Just wants it to stop. However, deep into the night, as I sit there in the chair meditating on the silhouette of my wife and my child, I have a really good conversation with God. And I cry out telling him, you got to stop this. These weeks that we were in the hospital, I continued to try and win over Gabriel's trust. Because if I had his trust, then I felt, if I had his trust in this situation in the hospital, that we would be able to move through this treatment and make it easier on everybody, the doctors, the nurses, ourselves. And I would tell him, Gabriel, just trust me. Trust Daddy. And so in this conversation I have with God, God kind of shows me and reminds me that we parent our children the same way God parents us. See, God is our Father. And that's not just a disciplinarian. God the Father wanted me to trust Him the same way I wanted my son to trust me. So what's a guy to do? I surrender the passion of a warrior. And I just rest. That's all I can say. This was a very big lesson for me. Because it's one thing to talk about the faith. It's one thing to say, yeah, God, we trust in God, I trust in you. when things are going great. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting in a recliner in a hospital 7 stories up, not knowing what's going to happen with your child, and feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. That's where the lessons of trust come. As time would go by, the treatments were taking their toll on this little guy. The steroids they had him on, the medications that they had him on, changed his figure, disfigured his face, his head, everything. Some of these pictures are not in order, but he always remained confident and trusting, and looked forward to comforting or being comforted by Mom, you know. And I kept reflecting back on that. There was one time where he was getting ready to have to go to an MRI. And Mom decided she was going to give him his medication. And it was another lesson in this, because Mom was not to be the object of where his pain and discomfort came from. Mom was supposed to be the one who comforted him. Now, Dad could deal with that, because Dad is Dad, and he can, that whole element of not only being a protector, but also trusting, I know what's best for him in this situation. And so what ended up happening was he wasn't going to bite at all. Mom was not giving him any medicine. Nope, he was not going to see her in that role at all. So Dad comes along, no problem. Takes his medication like a good boy. He knows Dad wants him to. And all's good. And as I have a handful there, you see, of the medications that he did take. Whenever we would go around the hospital, I always carried him. And it was natural for me to want to carry him so he didn't feel he was on his own going from point A to point B, even if I was holding his hand and Carol and I were walking next to him. I carried him wherever we went. When we went down to this MRI, I took him down, and we walk into this room. Well, first he says to me, where are we going, Dad? I said, well, we're going to go down and take some pictures. Okay. So we get down to this MRI room, and we walk in, and there's this like spaceship thing looking in the middle of the room. And I said, hey, Gabe, look at that. And he says, what's that? I said, well, that's where we're going to take pictures. I said, I'll tell you what. How about if I get on one side and you get on the other, and we'll throw a football through the hole? He looks at me and he says, nah. All right. So like a good little boy, he jumped up on there and he took his pictures with no problem. It started wooing like an airplane taking off. He thought he was Buck Rogers or something, I don't know, going off in a spaceship. When I would carry Gabriel, a lot of times he would grab me like a koala bear, and he would hold tight around my neck. And this came in real handy one time where we had to go, he would have a bone marrow biopsy, and he would have a spinal tap every few days while we were in the hospital, and then it would eventually become every 81 days. And Dad's job, well, let me come back to that. I was taking him to this one treatment room where he had to have these shots in his legs. They're called peg shots. And I picked him up, and he says, "Where are we going, Dad?" And a million things ran through my head. What can I tell him to fake him out? Right? And as I looked at him, and I saw him looking back at me with this innocent, trusting look in his eyes, I just said, "You got to get a shot, buddy." He said, "Okay." I said, "But I'll be there with you. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to let go. You just hang on." So we went into this room, and he stayed in that position you see there, and I sat on the table. And the two nurses strategically come around behind us. Each one has a needle. And they go, one on each leg. He doesn't see anything because he's hanging on to me. Next thing he knows, he's done. It was the best. There was another time that he was waiting on the doctor to come in. He had this tube in his chest. And he did not care for that. The one thing he hated the most was the tape that they would put on his chest. And then he'd have to tear it off. He hated that, right? During this one time, he had the tape on for a week. And think of a 4-inch by 4-inch Band-Aid with no pad, just all tape, you know. And they came in to tear that off of him. And he was not having any of it. None of it. The nurse came in, and she was kind of bent down over the bed, or over the sink. And I said, "You okay?" She says, "No." She says, "I hate this. This is the hardest part." She said, "Because this is what he's going to remember me for." And so I said, "Come on, I'll help you." You know. So I grab onto him, and she comes in there to get the tape, and she's just easing it off at first, you know. Well, after about 10 seconds, he had enough. And this little kid was strong. I'm telling you. Another male nurse had to come in, hold his legs down. I got him up on top, and there goes all my trust. I mean, you know. But finally, we get it off of him. And the nurse, she says to him, "Will you forgive me?" And he says, "No." So after a little while later, you know, she comes back in, she tries to give him a high five, and he says, "No." And I could see she was pretty crushed. So I took her aside and I said, "Listen, we'll be back in a few weeks under better circumstances. All right, we're not going to let him remember this as being the last thing he remembers of this particular nurse." But you know, one of the reflections I had in all of those situations was the need for me to carry Gabriel. And although I was carrying him to painful things, it was necessary for him to survive. And it often reminded me, you know, of the poem, The Footsteps, you know. There's two sets of footsteps in the sand, me and God, we're cruising, and all of a sudden God left me because mine are the only footsteps left. And you say, "God, where were you?" And he says, "Well, those were actually my footsteps. You know, I was carrying you." And so I kind of tuned into these little lessons, you know, along the way. We also tried to make fun of things. I mean, if you got to have an IV pole connected to you, you might as well ride it, right? I mean, come on. So that's what we did. We made the best of it. When it would come time for his spinal taps, every 81 days he had to have these. I would have to lay him on his side, and I would have to put my hand behind his neck and my other hand behind his knees and bend him in half. And then I would bend down and I would talk to him. He'd be sedated, but he'd be telling me the craziest stuff about SpongeBob and SquarePants and Patrick and Krabby Patties, and and in the meantime, the doctors are in the back, and they're sticking a needle in his spine, injecting chemo and stuff, and he's just chatting away, But he trusted me to do that, No one else could bend him like that, Well, then we got home, and he was pretty tuckered out, He was pretty drained. And during this time at home, we gave him a stuffed bear with wings, an angel bear. And whenever he would squeeze it, it would say the angel of God prayer. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here, ever this day be at my side to light and guard and rule and guide. And he'd squeeze it and squeeze it again, squeeze it again. He also, during this time, always heard Carol and I praying the Rosary. Whether we were in the hospital, whether Dad was in his meditation chair, he would hear us praying. And so people would also send prayer blankets for him. And he got to know our Blessed Mother very well. One day, Carol and I were driving him down to the hospital. And all of a sudden I hear, Angel of God, my guardian dear. And I turn around and it's not his little bear. It's him, strapped in his car seat, saying his Angel of God prayer that he learned. Well, during this time, this was in 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010. I was working on this book called To Knighthood on the Sacrament of Confirmation. We published it in 2009. But I had been working on this book, and I understood the power of that sacrament, the strengthening that comes with that sacrament. I mean, any of you who've been here the last couple of years have heard me talk about the power of the sacrament. Well, I decided my little boy's going to have it. So his sister Maria said she would be his sponsor. And I went ahead and I contacted the bishop. And I said, this is the situation. I'd like to have my little boy confirmed. And he said, absolutely, be happy to do that. And so he was. As a matter of fact, he was confirmed. Actually, let me just back up. A couple of weeks earlier, he had received the anointing of the sick on the same day that my son Joshua made his first communion and my son Michael made his confirmation. So all three of my younger boys, all received these sacraments all on the same day. So a few weeks later, the confirmation. And this was a pivotal time for Gabriel and in our lives that he received this sacrament. And there's some wisdom, and it's part of why in the book called To Knighthood, and also when I talk about confirmation, I insist of the efficacy of the sacrament for our young people, not teenagers. Younger than that. I'm talking, listen, there's a reason the church tells us in canon law that the sacrament of confirmation should be administered at the age of reason. And the reason for that is because prior to the age of reason, a child cannot sin. They can't choose right or wrong. They're still learning that. So they don't have the reasoning power to determine if something is good or bad, and so they can't sin. And if they're baptized, they're walking little saints. But what happens at the age of reason? The world is coming to get them, and they're now culpable for sin. And so the church says, hold on, we don't send our soldiers into battle alone. And she strengthens them with the sacrament of confirmation to defend themselves against these wiles of the devil and the attacks on society. By the time our young people get to be teenagers, many of them are already seduced and raped by the world, and it's a long road trying to get them back. And so, knowing all of this, I took great comfort in knowing that now Gabriel had this interior spiritual strength to combat what laid ahead. These are some of the different stages Gabriel went through. We were getting near the end of the treatment. This is Gabriel with my wife Carol, his mom. And this is Gabriel with his doctor and my wife Carol. One of the things that interested me, my curiosity, I had asked on a number of occasions to the doctors, what are we looking at? What can I expect? What's the survival rate? What are we looking at 20 years from now, 10 years from now? They said, we don't know. We don't have any stats. Okay? But we do have an 89 to 92% cure rate. I'm like, hot damn, yeah, baby. All right, those are good odds. Then I made the mistake of learning the medical definition of cured. Those of you that are nurses know that. It means that they live 5 years from the day of diagnosis. And we just did 3.5 years of treatment. So I didn't hang on to that joy very long, because for me it was just a feel good. You know, oh yeah, he's going to be cured, 98% or 89% cured. That isn't cured, you know. But as time went on, we would continue to learn these lessons in our faith. It would draw our family closer together. Gabriel became this hub, like a magnet. Did I just lose that? This hub that the family would all gather around. And he was probably, and is still, the gentlest of all my children. The most spiritual at a young age of all my children. And I attribute that. Some may say, well, it's because you know what he went through as a little boy, you know. I don't think so. I attribute it to God himself, who confirmed him at this little age, you know, 4 years old. Gave him the strength not only to combat and conquer what he was up against, but also now, once he passed the age of reason, to form a relationship with God, with Our Lady, with his own guardian angel. And it was real, because he was working with the power of the Holy Spirit. You know, the problem nowadays, we say, Holy Spirit, you sit over there on the sidelines until I'm done teaching them heavenly things, and then when I'm done with them, you can pop in there when they're 16 or whatever and do your thing. That don't work. It doesn't work. Gabriel now is a picture. with my older son's godfather, Father Martin. He's Monsignor in Los Angeles. Gabriel and Joshua served the Mass at the wedding of Jack and Johnette. That's Carol and Father Joseph, and that's Gabriel and my son Joshua. And there's Gabriel. So we're all going to be at the foot of the cross at some point in our life. Some of you may be there right now. But you have a Father who is in heaven. And we have our Mother Mary. And if you let the Father carry you, He will. Trust in Our Lady. Trust in our Father. And I know that this talk is short. But I'm going to end this, and I'm just going to tell you this. The world is a very noisy place. There are distractions all over that try to take your time away. Make time. Make time, quiet time for you to spend in union with God. Because one of the things that I learned at 2 o'clock in the morning in a recliner is that it's in the silence of your heart that you hear the voice of God. Listen to Him. Thank you.
That's a man of grace right there.
Thank you. Let me just keep this out of the way.
The Christian life on earth is a warfare. As baptized Christians, we are called to be soldiers of Christ, warriors in the kingdom family of God. I'm Thomas K. Sullivan, author of the book Called to Knighthood and designer of the Warrior's Rosary. Pope St. Pius IX said, "Give me an army saying the Rosary, and I will conquer the world." St. Padre Pio said, "The Rosary is the weapon for these times." Manufactured by premier Italian rosary maker Gabriel in Italy, this one-of-a-kind designed Warrior's Rosary brings together the elements of military combat and spiritual warfare, and places one of the most powerful weapons of spiritual combat into your hands, the Rosary. Each piece is custom designed to embody the reality of a spiritual warrior in the kingdom of God that every baptized Christian is called to be. The crucifix takes the 3 scriptural images of the Word made flesh in the person of Jesus Christ, the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, and the victory of the cross, and combines them into a truly one-of-a-kind crucifix. The front of the centerpiece features the Warriors for the Kingdom shield and crossed swords. On the back, a beautiful image of Mary holding the baby Jesus, raining down rays of grace upon a woman knighting a soldier on his knees, representing Holy Mother Church, administering the sacraments of baptism and confirmation. No knight, warrior, or soldier goes into battle alone. The Catechism of the Catholic Church makes it clear that prayer is a battle. Therefore, this rosary features a warrior saint from different parts of the world and periods of time on each of its Our Father medals. These medals form an elite spiritual special forces team that goes into battle with you every time you pray the rosary, beginning with St. Joseph, protecting a family and casting away a dragon under his title as Terror of Demons. Then, St. Michael the Archangel, under his title, Invincible Warrior, slaying the dragon Lucifer. The next medal features an image of St. George of England under his title, The Great Martyr. The fourth medal features an image of St. Louis IX, King of France, under his title, Lieutenant of God. Next is the image of St. Ignatius of Loyola under his title, Father General. Rounding off the Spiritual Special Forces team is the 14-year-old Cristero martyr, Blessed Jose Sanchez del Rio, under his title, Viva Cristo Rey. Let us ask in faith for the strength, the grace, the wisdom to engage in this warfare with the Rosary, heaven's weapon of choice. Get yours today at calltoknighthood.com.